This is a very, very important day, a day to commemorate the closing of a book of 90 years of history that Laconia has written, and a day to celebrate what has been the first in the nation closing of institutional systems and opening up of communities.
Hey, Jim. Good.
And now the place is closed. I hope all who are here are now participating in it full of life, a life that many others take for granted, but for which many, on the other hand, had to struggle. To those who did contribute, may God bless you unendingly.
We come to this campus on which I used to live for 23 and a half years. We don't live here anymore, which is good. We are treated respectfully by people out there in the community too. What a big relief.
We must never forget that there was once a place called Laconia State School and Training Center. For those who know of our pain, let us take turns reminding us of what it was like in Murphy, Powell, Keyes, Velka, Blood, Baker, and Floyd. For those who don't know, we need to keep this alive to remind everyone that institutions must never be a way of life for anyone ever again.
It was bricks and mortar filled beyond capacity with residents who were isolated from their communities. It was an institution born of a state's policy of frustration, fear, and a desire to do what at the time was right. It was New Hampshire's only home to many citizens with mental retardation and other disabilities. It was the only choice for some of New Hampshire's families. It was the last bus to nowhere. It was Laconia State School and Training Center. It is now closed. The doors are closed. The windows to the community are now open to everyone.
After a lot of work, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk exactly about what your plans are, where you're going to live, and the types of things that you're going to do, and the places that you'll need to be around going in the community, and just about what it's going to be like here, because you know that we're closing. Laconia State School is going to be closing, and you're moving out.
We didn't intentionally set out to close all these buildings and move all these folks into community programs. That the court order did call for a substantial number of placements, but it was a gradual incremental process in reducing the numbers of individuals that lived here. What we tried to do was to build a very comprehensive community system and improve the institution at the same time.
A lawsuit filed in 1978 by the New Hampshire Association for Retarded Citizens on behalf of certain residents of Laconia State School and Training Center was a significant turning point in the lives of all the residents of that institution. Many families had placed their children at the institution as a last resort to relieve the stress and overwhelming considerations of caring for them. The families were increasingly unhappy and disillusioned with the care provided and the lack of opportunities at the institution. The lawsuit was a culmination of their efforts and determination to improve conditions at the school, not necessarily at that time to close it.
Brian was born in February 1957. He was our Valentine baby, and he was born in Concord. And shortly after his birth, we moved over here. And we've been here ever since until poor Brian went to Laconia, and which was the worst experience that we've ever had to tolerate or endure.
Ray Blodgett, parent and member of the Association for Retarded Citizens.
Of course, we knew the Laconia State School existed, and most everybody knows it's there. But I'll never forget, again, the first day I went up there and driving on grounds and seeing those hundreds of handicapped individuals and realizing that my son was going to become one of them. It was a terrible deflation of my ego. It was a knife in my heart. It was just seems like the bitter end to a long struggle. But it happened.
Ray comments on the active role that he and the Association for Retarded Citizens played in the class action lawsuit.
Short term, it was to improve living conditions, which of course it did, tremendously. Long term, it was to close the institution, which happened, which has just happened. And there were many parents who either weren't sure that they agreed with what we were doing, or outright didn't agree with what we were doing. And even ourselves, we weren't sure to the very end that we wanted Brian to leave there, because you had the stability of the state. You had the state behind you, where other places, like some I mentioned, are here briefly. These conditions in which he lives now are well, maybe it's his reward for all he's been through for the last 17 years. It's just a very joyous thing for all of us. And at this point, I'm glad we closed the school, although we had some real reservations about whether we'd done the right thing or not. We did.
Changes at the institution and community-based services had actually begun early in the 70s, before the lawsuit. The suit brought together many people who were able to create and share a vision that eventually led to the closing of Laconia State School. Some of the people connected with the school and its closing comment on what helped to make it happen.
One of the things that was not a major obstacle was kind of knowing the right thing to do. Generally, there was tremendous unanimity in all levels of the system. The legal advocates, the parents, the professionals, the professional advocates, around what should be done. And we were able to arrive at an amazing amount of consensus as we went through this whole process on what should be done.
Institutions aren't really a good place to try and treat people and to give them the kinds of life experiences they need. I think there was just a lot of belief there, and all of these other factors that were supportive of this move just fell into place very well. There was a leadership, within the Division of Mental Health, at the Commissioner's office in the early days and, subsequent to that, that understood the social policy implications of this, the resource requirements, and basically worked with the Division of Mental Health in a supportive sense, to make this happen.
The achievement of a consensus within the political policymakers of the state that we would go after what we went after was not a given at all, and it's a place where other states to this day continue to struggle. From the Commissioner of the Department of Health and Human Services level on up through the governor and into the key legislators, the heads of specific committees, the members of the very important committees, appropriations, for example, the leadership of the legislature, the Senate and the House. We've enjoyed tremendous support.
I really think that the availability of the community care waiver, of being able to provide services with federal Medicaid support in communities under the community care waiver, was a major helpful piece that occurred probably in 1983 or so. And we were at a point at that point where we had to make a decision between setting up ICFMR facilities in the community and using that as a funding process, or using the community care waiver and trying to make everything in our communities be funded under the waiver program. So that was a major piece of funding process, and I think without the funding piece, we'd still be struggling to figure out how to do this.
Actually now we've gotten many calls from other states about should institutions be closed and which groups should be the last ones to go and things like that. And it's very easy for me to look at my colleagues and talk with people from other states and tell them that they got to do it, that they really should do it, that there's really only one answer, and that's do it.
Roberta Gallant, a former resident of Laconia State School, is building a new life in her new community, Concord, New Hampshire.
I was admitted to Laconia State School when I was 5.5 years old, and that was 1957 in the month of October. I was born with a learning disability as a result of my umbilical cord being wrapped around my neck. I live in Concord, New Hampshire now. I no longer live in Laconia, New Hampshire, and I love living in Concord very much. The state of New Hampshire put nothing but strict rules and regulations on people there with disabilities. We were not allowed to have this or have that. We either take what's there or go without. We had a Christmas tree, but we were not allowed to decorate it. The staff had to do that. We don't want any more institutions. We had enough of that stuff. We don't need to live in a place like that. If the state wants to give people with disabilities their freedom, then at the same time, it has to provide opportunities. I lived at Laconia State School for 23.5 years, and I know the challenges that face a person with a disability are great. And just because the institution has closed doesn't mean those challenges will go away.
In the Rockies, in the Rockies, far away.
Gunnar Dybwad, professor emeritus at Brandeis University and world-renowned leader in the movement towards community living for people with disabilities, has long-standing ties to New Hampshire.
New Hampshire now demonstrates, and will continue to demonstrate, after our 40, 50 years of experience, we can say this with confidence. New Hampshire will continue to demonstrate that in this day and age, we no longer need institutions. You believe in individual human beings. Once the good work started in New Hampshire, once you placed more and more people out, there was more communication. More people were ready.
I think that there's, if I might say this, there's another very important thing that happened in New Hampshire, as I understand it. You gave responsibility to people on a local level. It was a region. How many regions? 12? Something like that. But the people themselves who lived there were given the responsibility of making plans before the actual sending out of many people from the institution. The planners were ready They were already deciding how they would go about things.
We must learn to achieve this, of course, in other states. And as you know, Michigan has done wonders. Rhode Island hopes to close soon. Maine has done some very commendable things. You're not alone, but you're the first, and you should get mighty credit for it, that you have accomplished this. We are the first state who can say, we no longer need an institution. We take our hats off to New Hampshire. You're number one.
We never really doubted that we were doing the right thing.
The moment has come. Yes, it's pressure time. We're going to close the door any moment. All right, bye. That's all, folks.
That institutions must never be a way of life for anyone ever again.
Seems like the bitter end to a long struggle.
Don't want any more institutions. We had enough of that stuff. We don't need to live in a place like that.
We did a good job as we started it, and we did it gradually.
We never really doubted that we were doing the right thing.
People sense these are our people. We are the first state who can say, we no longer need an institution.
Gave responsibility to people on a local level.
We are evolving towards a more inclusive society.
We take our hats off to New Hampshire. You're number one.
Isn't it amazing what we've been able to do in the state of New Hampshire and in churches and in communities? Isn't it amazing what we've been able to do? I want to celebrate. And closing this institution, we've discovered who we are, I think. We've discovered what value people have. And we've discovered, to some extent, the kind of society that we want, that includes and values people. We've made dramatic changes.